You do not realize how much planning it took to make as many mistakes as we made this morning. All for the purpose of my sermon illustrations on perfection and righteousness. The social media is a very interesting phenomenon. I remembered literally a 3-person party line on the telephone. And now old buddies, old friends, old enemies, old nemesis can appear on your computer and say, hello, make me a friend. Well, I've been blessed by something recently. An old classmate from my first grade that I don't even remember has claimed friendship, and I've become a friend of hers, and she's proceeded to put pictures of not me so much in my early years in school, but of my early teachers and classes that she was in with her. And I must tell you about a hero of mine. Her name is Miss Mary Taylor. So you imagine a cloth dress down to the calves, those big black shoes, very thick, those simple big old glasses, and a bun. She was olive oil if you've ever seen her. And she was 6 foot or more, and a very slim woman. She may have been in her 40s when I knew her, but she seemed like she was 100. Well, that morning, right after Labor Day, in 1954, Daddy got Mildred and my cousin and Bobby and our neighbor, and he put us in the truck, and we drove in the back, which was fun. The little pickup truck, a 1952 Chevy, GMC, I mean. And we drove about 4 miles to this 4-room school, literally, guys, that had 3 teachers, and there were 3 classes in my first grade class. And that week, Ms. Mary Taylor did a miracle. We were into the first or second day, I guess. We had our Big Chief notebooks. You remember those brown, the red covers, and then they had the brown lines and the big pencils. I don't know why they gave us big pencils. We had little hands, but they gave us big pencils. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Well, what we were about was learning to write. And Miss Mary showed us on the board, we had those green that went around at probably every schoolroom in the country at one time that had the cursive with the lines, how to make an A, B, C. You can see them right now. I guess they were in a black background some places, but ours were green as I remember. We had on pads, and she sort of instructed us from the front, and then she'd walk the rows, and I had my desk, and the desk was set this way, and it was set for a right-handed writer. Well, little Doak, just not 6 yet, didn't know I couldn't see then, but I was struggling with what to do. Now, I had drawn and played at home, but not with this hand. I was a lefty. Miss Mary Taylor came through, and I looked up, and she looked up and down at me, and she didn't look mean. She just looked pleasant, and she bent down. I can nearly feel her on my shoulder now. She bent down, and while I was struggling with my paper like this, she just moved my notebook like this and took the pen out of my hand, a pencil, and put it in his hand. Said, okay, Doak, do it this way. So I learned to write like that. So when I see the president or other lefties do this, I don't know what they're doing. Mary Taylor probably had 2 years of college, had been nowhere, I imagine, never married that I know, spent her life with us snivelly-nosed little kids. Some of us smelled, and some of us looked pretty bad. And she did something that day with this kid right here that meant the difference. She did not say to Doak Maddox Mansfield, first grader, you have to write with this hand. She said, you can write with a hand you know to write with. You can do it this way. Now, I tell that story because it's true and powerful to me, but also to illustrate the point I sort of want to talk about today, the idea of perfection. Now, I've learned since then about 18-19% of the human race are naturally left-handed. And we break up into all kinds of things. I throw right-handed, I bat right-handed, but I write left-handed. What does that mean? What does that have to do with anything? We have inherited a notion, mainly from religion, that there's something you have to do to get it right. You are missing, behavioral-wise, on knowing how to live. There are some standards you must achieve. You must be this, you must be that. The left-handed kid is intended to be a left-handed kid. That's what life bestowed upon them. And I had a mentor, I had a teacher, I had a crone who bent over my shoulder and said, "Doak, do it your way. You are capable of adapting yourself to the world in such a fashion that you can make it work." Now, she didn't know she said that. And I put those words in her mouth thinking about it since then. But imagine what would happen to the world if we were able to engage our kids and one another, looking at the talents and skills someone brings rather than looking at the deficiencies of some standard that we have applied to them for them to live up to. How would the world be different? How would the world be different? Maybe we could say to the money managers of the world, you don't have to have all the toys to be whole. You can have toys, you can be fun, you can contribute to life rather than hoarding, seeing as the value of the greed that you perpetrate. To steal and connive from the rest of us to make it work for you. For what reason? Perfection is a misnomer. Perfection is an evil. Perfection is a sin because it says to the world, you are not worthy. You are not capable. The gifts that are given you, they don't matter. You got to go here. You got to take this course. You got to fill out this box. Your hair's got to be this color. You got to buy this deodorant. You got to have those teeth fixed. You have to be a left-handed kid in a right-handed world. The idea of perfection is a standard set up to control rather than to enrich, to enable. Mary Taylor, 1954, September, Camargo, Tennessee, Lincoln County, sat in a dusty schoolroom to a little kid. You go ahead and do it that way if you want to do it that way. Let's see how that works out. She gave me permission. She gave me blessing as an authority to go about my life and craft it the best way I could given what I brought to it. How many people have done that for you? How many people have said, you got to get over here. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to jump this bunch of hurdles to be competent. Rather than seeing that in your living, the way you've engaged, look at the treasure in this room. If I got each of you to write me a 500-page essay on a biography, I would find such gifts, such experiences, such stories to enhance and enrich humanity. Well, Unitarian Universalist comes to you and comes to me and says it this way. You come into this place as you are. You come into this place bringing what you have. You come into this place being authentically yourself. And we'll make a promise to you. We'll try to love you. And our only standard will be if you can be lovable with us. Now, what does that mean, Doak? That's fairy tale. No, it's not. Look at the world around us. We're shooting our kids down in the streets. We're perpetrating a war for 12 years, and we don't even know we've got a war. How are your taxes going? You paying for that war yet? Who's paying for that? How are we doing this stuff in the world? Boy, we got them iPads, we got them distractions, I got new applications. And people in Syria, 1 million have been moved around. My God. We need to wake up and we need to be aware. And we need to know that we have the ability, first of all, to be madder than hell and not take it anymore. And the next thing to know that we can figure out ways to solve this. Oh yeah, they're mad dogs. They're crazy people who are killing and kidnapping women, putting them back into slavery, sexual and otherwise, that are perpetuating great horrors. But why are they doing that? Just for the kicks? They're doing that because they're fearful. They're doing that because the West has, all right, I'm going to get in trouble. I don't give a crap. It's the truth. Because those who have been taken from the have-nots for so dang long. And they find a warrior God that'll be with them and they'll believe anything. Just like we did. I'm reading the book Mayflower, sort of a historical novel. And it shows what happened in Plymouth. Folks, all of our hands are dirty. Every one of us are beneficiaries of privilege. We didn't make that happen. I'm not saying don't be guilty about it. Be aware of it. What we inherit has been given to us by a power other than us. But the secret to it, same thing Miss Mary Taylor says, you don't have to accept what's been given to you as right and good. You can say, is there not another way? Is there not a creative response we can make to the hatred, to the separation, to the divisions, to the fact that I want to be a lover in a world where everybody's scared? I want to trust folks that they'll do right when people will disappoint me 9 times out of 10. But by God, I got 1 out of 10. And if I can have 1 out of 10, I can have 2 out of 10. And if I have 2 out of 10, I can have 3 out of 10. So Unitarian Universalism and the faith I believe in, the faith I try to practice, says to me, let's take everybody into the circle. Let's see what they got to bring to the creative process, and let's see if we can't get out of this mess together. I mentioned a phrase that some of my UU ministerial colleagues have come up about Unitarian Universalists trying to love the hell out of life. That's right. We don't deny that there's struggles. We don't deny that we're animals trying to be human beings. We don't deny that there's a lot of angel that's missing in us. We're animals with a reptilian brain knowing how to survive. But with knowing how to survive, do we then know how to live? There's a notion that the Native American taught me about a guy named Bob Thomas. That was his Anglo name. I'm not even sure what his Indian name was. He knew it, but he was a full-blood Cherokee. And I told you the story about him, and I'll close with this. I asked him one time in a retreat. We were studying Native American rituals and Native American spirituality, and I asked Bob, I said, can you summarize for me very simply the difference in the European attitude toward life and the Native American, the Earth people's attitude toward life? And he thought a moment, and he said, I think I can. He said, I think the European or the white or the exploiters, their motivation, their spirituality is about power over. Power over sin, power over life, power over means of survival and success. And he said, I think Native people are about pleasure. They're about participation. They're about joy in living. So we dance and we share. And we don't hoard. We know that creatively we can do something next time that's needed to make things happen. Now, I know Native American spirituality and a lot of stuff is idealized, romanticized. I understand that. But if something ain't working, let's try to find a better way to do it. In Western culture, exploiting capitalism is not working. We need to adjust ourselves through a spirituality that says our common good is what must be about. Oh, Doak, you're whistling in the wind. You're 65-year-old, you ought to know better. You usually vote for losing presidents and you spend money wrongly. If I cannot believe, if I cannot for hope, if I cannot appreciate and understand that I have to aspire, and you do too, then Mary Taylor's work was in vain. And I won't admit that Mary Taylor's life was in vain. Because she said to Doak Maddox Mansfield, get it, boy. You take what you got and you take it to life and you live it the best you can. And if you'll think back, there's somebody like that in your life who said to you, one way or the other, come on. It ain't going to whip you. It ain't going to beat you. You got a chance. You got a chance. Okay, we're running late. I got another hour's worth. Let's see here. I want to tell a story, and I'll tell it this time. I may have told it once before, but I'll tell it this time since it's a good story. I'm not sure how it relates to anything I've said, but it's a good story. And I may have told you once before, but y'all forget. Mark Twain had a bad habit of cussing his whole life. He had not gotten too far from his upbringing as the Huck Finn character and a few other Tom Sawyer characters that he really was. There's a story told that's been authenticated fairly well, I think, about his dainty Connecticut wife, which he found and he adored. And late in their marriage together, she had done everything she could to keep him from cursing, using that old river language and that California gold mine language. And she finally decided she had enough, so she had a dinner party, invited all their best friends to their home in Connecticut. I think it's Hartford. And at the close of the meal, she stood up, tapped the spoon on the water glass, and stood up and looked at him. Very, very small woman, very dainty woman, very, very proper woman. He was sitting beside her, and she started word after word, every word she'd ever heard him say, every expletive, every curse word. And she had them all down, too, pretty well. So she said the litany. And she sat down with blushing, of course, and looked at him as if, now what you going to do, old man? And he tapped his cigar on the ashtray and looked at her, and he says, "Madam, you've got the words, but you don't have the tune." The tune is what matters. I can speak the words up here, but if you don't catch the tune, if we don't catch the tune, it don't mean much. God bless you all. Have a safe Labor Day tomorrow.